For old-fashioned recipes and your gardening needs, while sipping on Kentucky bourbon. Sit right back in your big red hat. We're taking rural back from the urban. Listen to the stories where Kentucky is proud. Share the giggles with all of your friends. You all tuned in to Friends Drifting.
Hey, welcome to the June edition of Friends Drift In, your farm-to-table connection in eastern Kentucky. Today I'm breaking a rule. We have a rule at the Big Red Barn. Joyce and Charlie do not cook in the kitchen together. Do not. It is written in stone. But today I'm made a concession, and I have my husband Charlie with me, and I'm real tickled about that. We're working on today, we're going to do a pork tenderloin. We're going to do cheesy grits with garlic. And we're going to finish that off with fresh ingredients, as always. Some summer squash, which you should be able to find at your farmer's market about this time of year. Now I want to talk a little bit about corn, because corn is one of the most essential cooking ingredients there is. There's all kinds of different corn, and this particular corn is called Trucker's Delight. It's a dent corn. You can see it's kind of a flat, and it's a real large kernel. Now, dent corn is the kind of corn that, around here, we might have called it field corn. Is that what you would have called it, Charlie? And this type of corn is not the kind of corn that you really roast. It's more the type of corn that you grind for cornmeal. Now, I'm from northern Kentucky. You might have noticed from my accent. And Charlie made fun of me when we first got together at getting married because he didn't make grits. He didn't like grits. And I was just like, I'm from northern Kentucky. That's much more north, and you're southern. And finally I've convinced him that grits can be good. So I'm really tickled about how we're going to start today. Go ahead.
The thing about grits is, what I found is, what I didn't like was I never had real grits. We'd had the processed instant grits that you get at a lot of the stores. And real grits is something that takes about 20-25 minutes to cook. And of course, it's made with real coarse ground meal. And I think it's where we're going to start. We're going to go ahead and get that part started because that's going to take the bulk of the show today. And we're using rough ground cornmeal. And we're going to mix it in with some buttermilk and some water. There's 2 cups of water, 2 cups of buttermilk, and you need to keep this stirring until it comes to a boil, so that you can get, so that you don't let your buttermilk clabber up or solidify on you, I guess is what probably the better word for it here. And as soon as this comes to a boil, we'll be adding 1 cup of rough ground cornmeal, or grits is what this is. This was something we bought. It's made in Tennessee. It's actually a artisan type product, and there goes the boiling. Sorry, folks. So that means it's now time to put your grits into the meal. So you do that, and you stir them in while it's boiling.
It's real life here, folks.
Yeah, and you keep it at a boil until you get those stirred in good. And apologize for the mess you see in the bowl. But then you turn these down to, well, you actually got to turn the heat back on because it put it off. Then you turn it down on very low, and you cover these. And the big thing about grits is every 3 minutes you need to stir those so that they don't solidify. Now we're also going to put in probably, it's going to be a pinch of salt, but that's going to be close to a cup, 1 tablespoon or half a tablespoon of salt. We don't do a lot of salt because, you know, salt's not as good for you. It's good for your taste, but it's not good for you health-wise. So we put those in there, and we leave those covered, and we keep an eye on the time. You know, every 3 minutes you need to stir those. Now the next thing we're going to do is a pork tenderloin. Now this is one we got at the local grocery store. Nice fresh cut of meat. And we're going to use a spice rub. Joyce, if you'll reach me that behind you there. This is a spice rub we made up earlier. Start off with a half teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of a bourbon barrel paprika, which is a local product made in Louisville, Kentucky. And bourbon barrel, it's been smoked.
Matt Jamie.
Jamie.
And he smokes them with bourbon barrels. They come from They take the staves of the bourbon barrel and then they smoke that with his spices. He also does some salts and other rubs, but it gives it a really smoky and earthy flavor.
Be similar to a barbecue is what you'll get out of this flavor. You take this and you want to rub this spice in. Just keep putting,
Pat it good now.
Pat it good. Get it on all four sides. And you'll flip it over, and spice it back up on the other side so that you get it all over it. You get that, you work that down into your meat so that you get a good contact with it. It's also got a half teaspoon of paprika, or not paprika, but of cayenne pepper in this rub. I forgot about that one, and that is to give it just a little bit of spice. And people
we like our cayenne pepper, and you can grow cayenne peppers here in Pike County.
I'm gonna step over here and rinse my hands real quick.
Look for cayenne pepper plants at your local nursery. They take a little bit longer to grow than like a green pepper. The cayenne peppers take about 100 days to get them to where that they're really at maturity. But you can string them and grind them up and use them. You dry them and grind them and use them your own cayenne pepper, which we do on a lot of occasions.
We do. Sorry about that. Turned to the wrong camera.
There he goes.
I'm going to stir this. Keep stirring it. And you'll notice that every time you stir it, it'll get a little thicker. And the whole idea is to get it very creamy. Now we're going to also sear this real quick, so I'm going to turn this fan on for a minute. I know there's going to be a little noise, but we don't want to set the fire alarms off. Take you a little bit of oil, just enough to cover your pan. We're using a peanut oil because the peanut oil has a high smoke point, and you're going to get a lot of smoke here in just a few minutes anyway by searing this. Now I preheated my oven to 200 degrees. I know that's very low, but this takes a while. We're looking at about 2.5 hours to get this meat to the desired doneness. But if it's low and slow like that, you'll get a very tender and should be a pretty juicy piece of meat. And this is, in pork you want to cook it all the way through. This is a nice lean cut of pork, so you're not going to have a lot of fat. So if you cook it slowly, it'll take time for that juices to just ease out. They won't. If you cook it really fast, and what happens is when it gets dry is all that heat will evaporate all that water out of the meat, all the juices. And that's one of the things you got to work for. Now we're waiting on this pan to come up to heat.
Let me talk a little bit about the water.
Yeah, talk about your water.
Water. It's a really simple thing. Refreshing, clean. I went to Ceviche restaurant in Louisville. Chef Anthony Lamas, who has been an award-winning James Beard nominee several times, and I expect he's going to eventually get the James Beard Award. His signature dish, for a starter, is cold water with just a little slice of cucumber. It's simple. It is the most simple thing, and he made a big deal out of it when he brought it to our table. And I thought, what is the big deal? But on hot summer days in June, a little bit of cold water with just that crispness of the cucumber. It's great refreshing after you've been working out in the garden. It'll be it will help cut as we have meat, which will have a little bit of fat content in it. It will help cut that thing. So here's a $15 glass of water for you.
Okay. I hear the oil back there starting to sizzle, and we'll take this meat, and what you want to do is you want to take it, and when you hit that pan, you're going to hear it really start sizzling. You want to leave it in there till that one side gets good and brown. I'm going to set this off to the side.
Now we've talked about another way to know when your pan is ready is to have a little bit of water and just kind of throw a little bit of water in there for the sizzle, but Charlie has his own way of doing things. One of the reasons we don't cook together in the kitchen.
But the thing about it, you want to get this, if you get it seared on the outside, you want to get it very hot and then just sear it. You don't want to overcook it. You want to cook it just a little bit. And by searing it, that will seal those juices in, so when that low heat gets into it, it will keep it from drying out as much. Now, you can tell, you can listen to it. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but we're trying, like I say, not to burn the house down. So you get that little brown color. You can see the color, and part of that is the spices on the color that you're seeing there. And that's what you want to do, is get that color to it and seal that outside to keep those juices in. Now, normally we use a lot of cast iron, but this Teflon's a lot easier to clean up when you are searing something like this.
You want to stir those grits while you're waiting
I
on
will
that?
do that. Let's take that. and lift that off, and you stir them. You see they're getting a little thicker now, getting a little bit more of that golden color to them that you're used to. See, that's another thing too. A lot of people think of grits as white. Well, this is a yellow grit. This is actually from a yellow dent corn, as Joyce was talking about. It gives it a little bit more color to it. Let's flip this meat to one more side. Try to get those two sides. You want to get all four sides seared as best you can. And like I say, it doesn't take long. You're not worried about really cooking it as much as you are just getting that seared on the outside of it.
Are you going to put that on a pan, buddy?
Yes, I have a cast iron pan right there that we will use, and we'll put that in this pan. You know, take it and you'll set it in this pan. Then we'll turn this off.
Turn off your fan as well.
Turn the fan off so we can get back to the noise. We'll take this and we will stick this in a 200-degree oven. And again, it'll be about, I like at least 2 hours, because 2 hours gives you good time for it to just take its time, slowly cook, and get very tender. You'll be a lot like a barbecue. Now with that, we're going to work on making a sauteed vegetable dish.
And what you have there is a green zucchini.
Green zucchini.
They're about as average as they come. And then we also have a early straight neck yellow squash.
Yeah.
The difference between a green zucchini and a yellow squash, the color.
A lot of it is just the color. You know, the zucchini has a little bit different shape to it. It's got a bell shape on the end as they get older, and the seed pod will be more in there. The zucchini, the seed pod will be a lot like it is in a cucumber. It'll be all the way down.
Straight.
Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take and we're just going to slice this into nice little rounds. And we'll do a couple of these, and some of them won't be as round because
Charlie has much better knife skills than I do. You do beautifully.
Well, thank you. And so what we'll do is we'll cut the end off. You'll probably just cut one of these each for this meal, because just a small meal. Take both ends off of them, lay them there.
Yeah, it's important to remove the ends. One, if the ends carry a special enzyme, and it'll give you a little bit of an off taste. This is really important if you're canning. But always take off the ends so that it removes that off taste. You have the blossom end as well as the vine end. Yeah,
the blossom end, like I say, you get the blossom flavor. And squash blossoms, something else we didn't talk about those, is you can eat those. You can take those, drop them into a little batter, and deep fry them, and they're pretty good.
And they are very good.
So we're going to take that. We'll move these cucumbers out of the way so we don't get those confused. So you got the two types of squash, because the zucchini is a squash.
Right.
And we've also got a white onion, a Vidalia onion. If you'll reach back there and reach me those over here. We also took that Vidalia onion, and we went in and rough chopped it up, as you can see. And what we'll do is we'll do that, and we're also going to do a Granny Smith apple.
Let me go to the Vidalia onion for a minute. When we talk about local, I'm always wanting to grow my own. But Vidalia onions are very special, and the reason that they can be documented as special is because of the soil. The soil makes all the difference in anything that you're growing, and there is a specific concentration of acidity in the soil in Georgia that gives the Vidalia onion its special flavor. Now, I just say special flavor, but in France they call that terroir, that sense of earth. So there's your little bit of French for the day. Okay. After you add the Vidalia onion.
Well, first we got to keep stirring our grits. You got to keep them stirring or they'll stick to the pan. And as you can see, they're getting much thicker now. And if you're not careful, they will stick to the bottom. So you got to make sure you get into the corners of the pan, or in this case, the circles of the pan, and keep it stirred up good. Keep it on that low heat and keep that lid on it to keep that moisture in there with it. Lay that back in my little spoon rest there. And then turn around, and now we'll start to work on the apple. Just a plain Granny Smith apple, nothing fancy. Now I'm going to go about it a little different. We're not going to peel it, so we're just going to cut down the sides. Each side.
Granny Smith apples are very crisp. They're not as sweet as other apples, so that they give a little bit of tartness. And when you're talking about pork, pork tends to have a lot of fat, and so that tartness kind of breaks it up a little bit.
Apple is a classic dish with pork. You grew up pork chops and applesauce.
Sure.
You know, but you know, we're going to try to make it a little bit more fancy. We're just going to add this apple. And then the Granny Smith, the nice thing about it is they keep their shape when they're cooking. They're a much stronger apple. So we're just going to kind of rough cut it into a rough dice. We'll stay here and cut it this way, and then just turn it around, make another couple of cuts, and you got a nice diced apple here to go with those other ingredients. Turn around and do the same thing with a couple of slices of it, because you want to get that apple flavor into this dish. That one just has to go like that. And the nice thing you want to do, you want to try to get everything about the same thickness and the same size as much as possible, so that they'll all cook evenly, so that you don't have one part of your dish that's cooked more than the other. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to saute these. We're going to take them all together. And let me turn around again, stir my grits. Again, that's the one thing about grits is you've got to keep stirring them. And again, they're thickening up nicely here. You know, you say about 20 to 25 minutes, but the thing about grits is you cook them by sight until they're creamy, real creamy and smooth, and you see that grit going away from them. Now, first thing we'll do now is we'll try to saute these vegetables. So we'll take, there's another pat of butter there behind you, Joyce. We've got butter for that. So we'll take butter, and we will move this. We will move this pan out of the way, and we'll take this other one, and we will put that butter in it.
Why don't you move the grits to the back burner?
Let me turn another burner on back there. Put them back there on that. Turn it up just a little bit, and we'll put this in here. Let that butter melt. And when that butter melts, we'll put this in there. Not going to put much of seasoning. There's in the way of seasoning in this. We'll put just a little salt and a little black pepper, because those do bring out the natural flavor, especially salt. Salt, that's the one advantage that salt has, is it brings out a lot of the natural flavors in food. And
we usually use a kosher salt, which is a little bit coarser, whether you can tell. But I use a coarse when I'm cooking on top of the stove. Now, when I'm cooking with baked goods, I like something that's a little bit finer ground, because it will dissolve better in a baked good. But for this type of thing, I like a little bit of the coarse salt. It does not have, this is a kosher, and it does not have the iodine in it. We don't need iodine like we used to, but back many years ago, we used to worry about goiters, and that was a real problem here in Appalachia.
it is,
and that's an iodine deficiency. So, but you don't always have to have the iodine, and this type will not discolor your vegetables too. Iodine tends to discolor vegetables.
In the United States, we've not had to have the iodine in a long time. Joyce and I were big into that. We were in a group that helped iodize salt all over the world. So, but we could talk about that all night as well. But the butter should be just about ready.
It's ready.
Okay. So what we'll do, first thing we'll do is put your onions in. Remember to turn in the right direction. Just a rough cut on those onions. They're not very big pieces. So we've got the onions in the pan, and we're waiting on them, to get a little bit more heat. You can see right there, and now not quite the heat I want, so I'm going to probably turn it up a little bit more. I want to get those onions to start sizzling a little bit before we add the other ingredients in here, which will be, again, the apple and the two types of squash. And I see that starting to sizzle up a little bit, the butter. I'm going to remove these, and I'm just going to kind of ease them in a little bit at a time. You can see those apples and all that color in with the different colors. You got two shades of green and the yellow from the squash. And that's starting to sizzle up a little bit. And I'm going to be a little fancy here today. I'm going to try to flip it around some. That's one of the things that we do.
I'm the one that has to mop up after he gets finished flipping around.
Well, now, she did have to do that at first when I first learned, and a pinch of salt. Again, that's probably going to be about a quarter to a half a teaspoon. And then we like fresh ground pepper. This is got a little pepper grinder in it. We'll put about 3 or 4 grinds of pepper into the top of that.
The reason that we use a fresh ground pepper is if you buy a pepper in the store that's already powdered, then it's exposed all of its sides and it's let the oils dry out. Whereas if you use something that has peppercorns in it, fresh peppercorns, and you're grinding it, then you're releasing those oils as you're cooking, and that just gives it much more enhanced flavor. And flavor is what we're all about.
Let those kind of get warm back there and warm up. Again, got to go back to the grits. We got to turn back and stir those grits. If you don't stir them, you have to grab that handle. Turn the other hand. I'll use my left hand. Stir them good. Make sure that they stay from sticking.
I thought you were a TV star.
got to keep the grits stirred. Sorry. Again, just keep flipping those around. Keep them moving around so that they all get in contact with that heat. You don't want to cook them down till they're real soft. You want them still, especially the apple. You want that apple to have just a little bit of crunch left to it when you get done, so that you get some texture with it as well. Now we're waiting, as you can, I don't know if you can hear that on TV or not, but that's getting
Hear
good
the
and warm.
sizzle. We like it when they sizzle.
Again, a very simple dish, but also a dish that's a very farm,
Seasonal.
Yeah, seasonal.
It's very seasonal.
You get those
right
seasonal.
Right now you've got zucchini, and if you plant six plants, you're going to have zucchini all summer long, and you'll be sneaking up on the neighbors' porches and sticking bags in the neighbors' cars. You know, you'll have plenty of zucchini. 6 plants is enough for the average family.
Yes, it is. You know, we raise a kind of a small market garden, so we'll put a few more than that out. We'll take some to a couple of the chefs in town. We'll also take some to the farmers market, because, you know, everybody doesn't have the opportunity to grow these, and we're blessed to have a nice piece of property that we can do that with. Again, let's flip these around. Don't let them, make sure they don't burn. You don't want them to sit too long on the bottom. Start to smell. You can get that flavorful smell. While I'm back here, I'll go ahead and give those grits another stir.
Y'all, I give Charlie a hard time about making me grits, but he will make me grits on the weekends for breakfast, and I do love him for it.
It's not an everyday. It's a treat to get real grits, because it takes time. You know, and this is more of a slow food kind of thing. You know, growing up here, this is kind of stuff that we ate. We ate a lot of pork. We ate a lot of fresh vegetables. Now, this is a little fancier than what we grew up with here, but it's still the same flavor.
It's the same ingredients and the same flavors, and we don't want to get, while we respect the Appalachian traditions, we also want to move to the future. And so this is just a kick up, but still very much in the moment of the mountains of Appalachia.
It is. You know, pork was a very popular meal for us. You know, we had pork 2 or 3 times a day, just keeping an eye on this to make sure that it doesn't. And if you can see, you start to see a little color. That's what I call it, a little bit of browning getting onto the vegetables down in there. You'll see that color. That shows that they're getting some good temperature to them. Again, stir those grits.
Grits about ready?
It's going to be a couple of more minutes still. Yeah, they're getting there. I mean, they're edible at this point, but they're not as smooth as you would like them.
Now, we talked about this. We don't like edible. We want them perfect.
That's right.
And one of the reasons that you're cooking these slow grits this way is once you've had a slow cooked grit, you will never, I don't want to ever come to your home and find instant grits in your house. Please, instant grits.
And they're worth it. They're worth the time it takes to get there, because, you know, and you want to talk about grits. You know, if you're here in eastern Kentucky or deep in the south, they're grits. You know, you go over to the European continent, Italy, and they're polenta.
Polenta.
Now, you know what polenta is? Just a thick grit. That's all it is.
But now, you know, they make it sound like it's really fancy, and we don't know what we're doing. We've been cooking polenta a lot longer than they've been cooking grits in some cases.
Yeah. Again, and those grits, they're starting to thicken up a little bit. You can see that thickness, how they're hanging to that whisk. Knock that loose. Keep them. You know, they're. You know, you can eat them now. They're good now, but the longer you cook them, you don't want to cook them too long, because then they'll get too thick to do anything with. And those are done. I'm going to take those, and we're going to put them on the back of the stove and keep them warm for a moment till we get the grits ready. And we'll pull them back up to the main part of the stove and turn that down to low. We'll turn this other burner off, and again, we'll stir those grits. And then I'll take that out. I guess we can probably start going ahead and getting ready to finish these up. Let me get, now we'll turn around. You turn the heat off completely on the grits. Then you'll add 4 tablespoons of butter. Take that butter.
And that is an organic butter. Use your fingers. There you go.
Put the butter in there.
Organic butter, unsalted. We never buy salted butter here, because if we salt to taste, and if you're cooking with butter, and you've already got the salt in it, then it might be too much. So we always buy an unsalted organic butter.
Stir that butter in, let it melt and incorporate. And let's see, then you got your garlic. I'm going to take a little bit of this garlic.
Now, Charlie cooks his garlic. He's a great mincer. And again, always using fresh ingredients. So this is a fresh garlic. We mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. You can grow garlic in permanent beds. Try it.
1 teaspoon of garlic. You'll set and you'll stir that in and make sure that everything in there is good and incorporated. Let me take my paper towel here. Now we got 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese.
Now, you shredded this?
Actually, I got this one.
He cheated.
I cheated today.
He cheated.
You got this in pre-shredded form. This is but it's a shredded. It's a natural cheddar cheese.
It is.
It's made by a good reputable company, but it's a nice shredded cheddar cheese, and I like the really fine shredded because that melts so much better. And that's what you want to do.
But generally speaking, we shred our own cheese, and the reason that we do that is because if you buy a pre-shredded cheese, it tends to clump, and it has a clumping agent in it it keeps it from anti-clumping, and so it doesn't melt as well as if you shredded it yourself.
That's true. That's true. But in this application, you got so much heat in there, you put that whole 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. And then you'll take and you'll stir that until it incorporates into your grits and just melts down, and you'll get a beautiful yellow color to these grits now. Take that yellow cheese and that yellow corn, and you get a really nice consistency. You stir that in until it's all well blended in, and that is garlic cheese grits. Now, we're going to try to plate. Give me a spoon out of there, Joyce.
Ladle work?
Ladle will work. So what we'll do is we will take 1 big ladle full of these grits, and we'll put them on maybe 2. Make it a nice pile of grits in there. You want it up there good, about a ladle and a half. And then you'll take and put a good spoonful of these nice sauteed vegetables in there. Get some of those apples in with it and put it onto the side of the plate. And now we'll pull that pork roast out of the oven. And we'll take that pork roast and let's see. Give me a cutting board. We'll take another cutting board here, the other side. We'll take that pork roast. I'm sorry, I've turned to the wrong side of the camera again. My fault. You can take that pork roast out of there and put it out on your cutting board. See all that color that we put on it earlier?
Now, normally we would let that rest for about 15 to 20 minutes, but for the sake of TV.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and just cut right in the middle of it here on the diagonal, and you can see how beautiful and white that meat is.
It smells so good. I'm hungry.
You take a nice couple of slices on the diagonal of that pork.
They call that cutting on the bias. If you sew, you know what cutting on the bias means.
And we'll take one, we'll lay it right there. And we'll take another one, and we'll just kind of stack them in, maybe 3. What do you think?
Oh, since we're sharing, I think that'll work.
We'll make it look nice and neat there. So you get those 3 of those, and there you have a roasted pork tenderloin with a mixed vegetable, we'll call it on the side.
Summer vegetables.
And a cheesy garlic grits.
Honest to goodness grits. So we're gonna wrap it up for this segment, but we're gonna go eat at the table. So mark this in history. Charlie and Joyce in the kitchen together. It doesn't happen very often, except when we sit down to dinner.
Yes.
Which is very nice to sit down, and that's very much part of the Friends Drift In concept, is to have community and to build family. It's very important to Appalachia. It's very important to the world. So today we're enjoying fresh summer squash that Charlie sauteed with a little bit of Granny Smith apple. We've got grits. My man loves me. He made me homemade grits. And then we have a pork tenderloin. And we don't usually eat off the same plate, but he plated it so pretty, I just thought this was the way to go. Now, I'm going to start with the grits because it's always my favorite. Oh, creamy. You do all right.
Yeah.
You do all right. 25 years together, and
Take you
we
a little,
might make another 25.
cut you off just a little piece of that pork there, and I think you need to
I'm stealing it.
that's right. Take you some of those. You need to eat some of those vegetables with it. I think it would give you a nice flavor profile there to get those together. Take that and get you some of that squash and a piece of that apple.
Now let's talk about putting pork and apple together. Growing up in Cincinnati, that was very much part of the Germanic influence. Down here, more a little bit of the Scotch influence. Very good. Very good. And I'm tickled to be sitting here with you, and we're actually slowed down for a minute. So we're winding up today with Friends Drift In. For more recipes, check out my website. And remember, at Friends Drift In, what do we do, Charlie? We share the giggles.